Hello and welcome to Regent Park TV. Today we are going to do a segment of Politalks. My name is Caleb and this is Rachel. Rachel is a well-known community volunteer as well as an equal rights activist, and she's even been in a Vice documentary. Now she's taken on the political role. Rachel, could you please just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, my name is Rachel Lauren Clark. I've been a community volunteer for over 10 years. Most of what I deal with are issues around LGBT inclusion, especially for the trans community. I've been involved with organizations such as Amnesty International, the 519 Community Center. Currently, I'm the chair of the Queer Liberals, which is a political organization. I've done a great deal of advocacy work for poor and marginalized communities, as well as mental health awareness.
Awesome. And so I understand that you made history by being the first trans person to open up a Major League Baseball game at the Blue Jays game.
Yeah.
So could you just speak on how you got that opportunity and how that experience was?
Well, I was the secretary of the board of directors for Pride Toronto, and every year they have a Pride event for the Blue Jays. It's been a pretty low-key affair in the past, although it's increasingly being better. I mean, I think you saw this year they had hats with rainbows on, which were amazing. So they asked somebody to throw a pitch that's from the board of Pride, and so they asked me to do it as a trans person. They had never had a trans person throw the pitch before. And the Blue Jays didn't specifically request that.
Right.
In fact, I didn't even think they knew what was happening. I just went as a representative and threw the ball. But it turns out that I was the first open trans person to throw a pitch at a Major League Baseball game. And it kind of got a lot of attention, which was unexpected for me, for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so now you're shifting into politics, right? Mm-hmm. And so how has your experience been with being like openly trans in politics now?
Well, I think it's difficult. There's a reason why in Canada we don't have trans representation in our governments. So there's trans people who have run for office and won before. There's a small town in Quebec that has a mayor that's openly trans. There's a couple of more very kind of more minor positions. But if you look at the government in terms of the federal government and the provincial government in all provinces and territories in Canada, there's no trans people who have been elected, even though there's 300,000 or so trans people in Canada. I think the reason why is because there's a lot of unconscious bias still. I think it's very hard for a community who most members of the community live below the poverty line to be able to get access to resources. I think there's still a stigma around trans people that I'm hoping that we're doing positive work to fix. And so there's many, many factors that make it a difficult process for trans people.
Right. Okay. And so what was that? Was there one event that pushed you to say like, wow, I really want to get into politics? Or was it a buildup of just things that you decided, you know what, maybe I should take on the political world? Yeah.
So I think I've always wanted to be involved in the political process. So to me, it's more, I didn't feel like I was having enough efficacy going out into the community that I was doing work with and saying, well, I'm not willing to step up myself and do this work. And so I was kind of trying to decide where I was going to run, where it made sense for me to run, where I could make the most impact. And this community here is eventually where I ended up. Right. And the reason I ran for the Liberal Party is because, well, I'm president of the Queer Liberals. Okay. And Bill Morneau and I, who is the federal representative here, we have an excellent relationship together. I really felt that we would be a very good team together with him and the federal government and me here in Ontario to be able to work together to make some really transformative change for our communities down here. And so I decided to run, and ultimately I didn't win, as you know, but it was a really great experience for me. And I met tons of people, which was great. It always makes me happy.
Definitely. That's awesome. And so you're obviously very adept to community volunteering. Yeah. So what direction would you like to see the Toronto Center community kind of striving for the future?
Right. So I have some concerns about the community here. My number one concern is that I really feel like people are being pushed out of the community. People who have spent their lives living here and growing up here and having a life here, it's becoming unaffordable for most people. And it's not just people who have traditionally lived, below the poverty line or at the poverty line, or middle class people that are being pushed out. There's also segments of the groups of those people who are being pushed out as well, like millennials, as an example. So what I see is this great migration of millennials to places like Ajax and Caledon and different areas outside the Toronto community.
Right.
I think what's going to happen as baby boomers, as a group, they get smaller, just through attrition, through normal life. There's not going to be enough millennials living in the city anymore to be in that gap.
Right.
And so so that's not sustainable. That's a huge problem. You cannot have a city with all wealthy people living in it and expect to survive.
No.
And so diversity is so important. We're pushing our most marginalized people out of the city, and that's a huge concern for me. And so I would really love for people to start recognizing that and working on how we can, create a sustainable community.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And so what types of things are you currently working for or working towards, or any organizations, I guess, or just your current work? What are you?
Yeah. So right now I'm an employee at TD Bank Group. What I do there is I'm an engineer by trade. So I do engineering, but on the side, I'm really involved a lot in community giving. So it's about identifying organizations who are going to make a positive impact to our communities. I always believe that the government, as a rule, can't always address every need in every community.
No, yeah.
And since TD, as a corporation, has laid out their slate here in the Toronto Center community, I'm really strongly believe that there's a social responsibility for all of the corporations who are down on Bay and Wellington, or where, Bay Street, all the corporations, multi-billion-dollar corporations who set up shop here in Toronto Center have a responsibility to take care of their communities.
Right.
And so what I really do is I advocate for the bank and other organizations to go out into our own community and help to fix some things. So we've given money to lots and lots of community organizations here in Toronto Center. And I believe we're already starting to see positive impact from that. So it's really happy. It makes me happy to see.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. And lastly, so what would you say is your biggest goal or biggest ambition as of now, whether it be politics, volunteering with community work, the LGBTQ, just what is your biggest ambition or goal as of now?
It's never been about me. It's so difficult, because I think when you run for office or you do volunteer work, the narrative gets kind of shifted to you as a leader.
Right.
So you're doing thought leadership, or you're doing leadership, and it's like, well, it's about Rachel and what she wants. Really, my goal has always been to listen to people and say, what do you want? And we really need to fix politics in this country, and here's why. Because people who we're electing are saying, this is my personal ideal, this is what I believe, so I'm going to bring my own moral turpitude to the parliament or wherever I'm going. And when I have people here who are screaming at me that they need help or need guidance or need things, I'm going to say, yeah, but that goes against my beliefs. So we have to kind of hold our elected officials to account a lot more, to say, we're having real problems here and we really need to fix it. So for me, if I can help to engage that conversation, that is 100% my goal. To engage people in having that conversation about how can we collectively do better.
Yeah.
For me personally, I really have made a lot of commitments towards using any privilege that I have to be able to help people. And so whether that's giving part of my own money, or volunteering community hours, or doing what I can to help people, it's really important to me to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Rachel, how has just being openly trans affected your life, would you say, overall?
Well, I think it's been, so that's a kind of a two-part answer. The first part is that it's been liberating for me. I think that as we go through life and, we have this great era of scientific discovery, what we're discovering is that trans people are legitimate, which is something that has changed over the last 20 years. And it's especially changed over the last 3 years. But for me, being trapped or playing a part, I don't want to say trapped per se, but I felt like I was always playing a part that wasn't mine, that I was conforming to the societal norm that didn't fit with me, and it caused me a lot of stress and anxiety in my life. And so to be able to come out and live my life has been really terrific. On the other side, being a trans person means that you're going to be subject to a lot more discrimination and abuse. Whether people are verbally assaulting you on the street, trans people have been exposed to greater situations of violence. Healthcare is harder to achieve. Discrimination happens all over the place. That's a very difficult thing to handle, especially if you're a visibly trans person.
Right.
And so these are issues I think that we need to work on. If I can just talk about running for office as a trans person a little more, I think that one of the things that was hard for me when I was going through that is that the narrative, all of the good ideas that I had were lost underneath this veil of you're the first trans person to do this, or you're a trans person who's running for office.
Right.
And when I was talking to people, I'm like, well, gee, that's great, but you're really missing all of these great things I want to do for you. And all of this wonderful stuff that I have planned and how great it's going to be. And so I was really sad. I think in the end, in retrospect, that's maybe part of the reason why I didn't succeed was because my message about taking care of people and having a better community was being lost in this narrative of you're a trans person. So for me, that's something that if I run again for office, which I very well may, I need to figure out how to solve that.
Right. Okay. And so do you think you're going to continue to pursue in politics? And is there a certain position that you eventually want to reach in politics?
I mean, prime minister, of course. No, I think that I want to position myself in the right place at the right time that will have the most impact on our community.
Right.
And so if that opportunity ever presents itself again, and I feel like, I learned a lot of lessons from running this last time. I had a very short window to do it.
Right.
I feel like if I were to do it again, it would have to be, another situation where it was right. For me, but right now I feel very strongly that I can make more effectual change not being a politician. Especially with the government that we have now. Not disparaging the government we have now, it's just different. They have different agenda that I don't necessarily agree with, and being a liberal in Parliament, Ontario Parliament right now is not even official party status right now. So it would have been difficult for me to, take away from all this great work that I'm doing and give to that. And so it'd have to be a really good situation for me. Yeah,
definitely. Well, that's awesome. Thank you, Rachel, for being on the show today, and thank you for letting us interview you. This has been Politalks. My name is Caleb, and thank you for watching.